Can you watch this 5-minute news article about tariffs and globalization from a Clintonite advisor? Sure. Why not? 5 minutes? Sure. It's actually 5 minutes 31, but you know.
David J. Lynch is global economics correspondent for the Washington Post. He has a new book coming out later this summer, The World's Worst Bet, How the Globalization Gamble Went Wrong and What Would Make It Right. David, how big a departure is this new policy that President Trump is trying from what had been the previous policies?
This is an epic shift in international economic affairs. This is really an about-face for the United States after 80 years of trying to lead the globe into a more integrated, seamless global economy with free trade, capital flows, investment moving easily across borders. Now the President of the United States is saying, no, that was a bad deal. It hurt Americans. It allowed other countries to take advantage of us. We're going to go in a different direction.
So far, nothing he said is incorrect.
How are average Americans likely to feel the impact of this?
Higher prices.
On
just about everything you can think of. I mean, he's taken a left-right shot at foreign trade with a 10% tariff on everything, just about every good that comes into the country, and then a separate round of much higher tariffs, up to 40 and 50%.
He does have a very nice beard. Yeah.
Selected countries. And so toys, furniture, smartphones, footwear, clothing, just about everything you can think of, alcohol, that comes from another country, you're going to end up paying more for it.
And of course, he says the payoff for this pain is going to be...
And everything in our country, of course. Because one, a lot of the stuff made in this country is made using resources taken from other countries. And two, an overall increase in prices is going to put pressure on domestic manufacturers to raise their prices. Like, there's absolutely nothing stopping a company that makes stuff domestically from artificially pricing their stuff higher because they want to, because they can get away with it. Companies do that all the time.
Revitalized American manufacturing sector. Can tariffs rebuild American manufacturing?
Well, the president certainly thinks so. Most economists would say no, or would say it would only occur over a quite long period of time and at enormous cost.
So wait, how am I meant to critique this? So far, everything he said is unobjectionably correct and also in line with stuff that I've already said. Was this just like a gambit to get like two guys with good beards on? What do I say here?
The way supply country, if done right, it can contribute to peaceful relations. It can contribute to political liberalization in places like China and Russia.
Oh, wait, hold on. Now we're making points.
This is a sea change, as you said. It's a sea change from globalization, which had been sort of the driving force since the Bill Clinton presidency. What was the goal of globalization? What was the idea behind it?
Well, the idea was simple. Bill Clinton used to say, look, globalization is a fact, not a choice. But this is something that's going to make us wealthier as a country. If done right, it can contribute to peaceful relations. It can contribute to political liberalization in places like China and Russia. And for a long time, it looked like that was happening.
All right, well, now we're going with the wrong-headedness, okay? If you were a Clintonite advisor, then you would have been present during the fall of the Soviet Union and the shock doctrine, like as political and economic liberalization swept across the former Soviet Union and led basically immediately to widespread corruption, consolidation of assets into the oligarchy, essentially like mass privatization, de-democratizing an already undemocratic society, and basically like shot them in the foot. Bush was president during the fall of the USSR. Yeah, yes, I know that, but you were the continuing fall. It wasn't like a one and done thing. Clinton presided over like a significant portion of the economic liberalization, the shock doctrine, as applied.
But Clinton also
kind of an evil
said
photo.
There are going to be winners and losers from this process.
We should have gone harder with the shock doctrine, never let Russia recover. I know that you're probably like an edgy NAFO teen who hasn't really thought it out, but the reason Russia is the way it is because of us. You know that, right? Like, basically, after the end of the Cold War, Western oligarchs, politicians, and economic advisors were like, wow, that was a fun half century of battle. Let's like rape you to death, basically. Like, let's humiliate you for daring to challenge our global hegemony. Like, you've cut us off from like half of the global market for so long, you're going to pay for it. So we swooped in and we were very aggressive in pushing for privatization, taking advantage of their of their weakened markets, their weakened political systems. A lot of it was domestic, but a lot of it we also facilitated externally. And as a consequence, we kind of shot them in the foot with regards to like their ability to properly democratize. Neoliberals basically guaranteed that the entire post-Soviet world turned into, well, we did to them basically the same thing we did with like racial apartheid here in the United States, right? Like, the civil rights movement happened half a century ago. Black people are still way the fuck poorer than white people, right? You set in motion all of these forces and all of these influences, and you essentially guarantee that, like, down the line, you create, I wouldn't say an uncorrectable imbalance, but you create a pretty difficult one to deal with, even though it would have been to your mutual benefit to allow them to participate fairly and equally in society, you know?
That'll be okay because the winners' gains will be so great, they'll be able to provide for the losers, to help those without the skills and education to capitalize on this.
Russia's literally never been a democracy. The way they act now is how they acted before and during the USSR too. I'm sorry, wait, do you unironically like believe in race realism? Do you think that like Russians are just like a different kind of human being that are naturally unsusceptible to, like, you realize the arguments that you could make could be applied to like any oppressed minority in all of human history, right? Like, well, you know, oh, Jewish people, Romani people, Irish travelers, they've never been able to integrate. They've never been capable of integrating. Black people in America have never been like Wall Street, you know, Forbes 500 managers or what. Like, you could, it's unworkable. And you're also kind of racist. Fuck off.
But that second part never happened. It was all just rhetoric.
And were there losers in this? Were some people, some Americans left behind?
No question. If you were, and it was specific groups of people, those with the least amount of education, the least skills, engaged in basic manufacturing, they took it in the chops. And they tended to be, the companies they worked for tended to be clustered in certain communities. So the cost...
Acknowledging that Russia has a cultural and history of authoritarian leaders' racism. What do you, you could say this about so many parts of the world. What are you talking about, man? What do you, like, a country historically has authoritarian leaders? Do you, so what is the point you're making then? It was okay for neoliberals to pillage the former Soviet world because they didn't have a democratic culture prior? Is that okay in like every country? Can we like do whatever we want in Africa because in many parts of Africa they haven't really had a functional democracy? What is the implication of what you're ridiculous? You don't even think about the stuff you say. You're clown people. You're silly. You're silly people.
Costs of this process, which we should say brought enormous benefits to the country, kept inflation under control for 2 decades, gave us all wider product array, created a better mix of jobs in the economy. But the costs were concentrated like an economic tumor in specific communities. And those people, understandably, grew to resent what was happening.
You say there are people with less education, which is also one of the deciding factors or ways of telling who people supported for president in the last election. Did any of the architects of this globalization idea have second thoughts or acknowledge that some people lost?
I think the problem with rhetoric like this also is that people in the American manufacturing sector are not the only ones who lost out here at all. Like, in reality, globalization is part of a broader set of economic principles that have hollowed out all life for everyone, except for an incredibly small, like, portion of people. You know, like, even if you're not in the manufacturing sector, you have seen as like your downtown areas have become hollowed out, your retail spaces have closed down, no one can afford rent to open up businesses, but also no one's even occupying the space, so why are they being kept open? It's not just globalization. There are a lot of like overlapping and interconnected economic systems that are causing these problems, but it does go way, way, way beyond the like tired narrative of, well, the city folk benefited, but the rural working class factory workers got hurt. Because that's a small part of the story. That's part of it, but it is a small part of it, I think. There's like a broader dynamic here that isn't really getting addressed, and it's because the underlying issue with globalization is just an extension of pre-existing capital logic, right? Like, globalization is just what if you expanded the innate imbalances in production and consumption from one country to all countries. Even if you did everything within the United States, you still have these imbalances. We had these imbalances in the United States. Do you think there weren't economic losers before globalization? In 1930s America, do you think there were any sectors of society that might have been getting the short end of the stick? Probably more than now. Globalization didn't, like, create this imbalance. It just exacerbated it by widening the scope of who could be targeted. You know? It's complicated.
Out?
Yeah, people will say now, and really on both ends of the spectrum, people who worked in the Clinton administration and the Bush administration will say, you know, we should have done more. We should have prioritized these distributional costs, done more in terms of labor market policies, in terms of relocation assistance, wage insurance, and the like, to help those people who really, through no fault of their own, were left behind. But the problem...
I guess, like, my issue with this is that what he is describing cannot happen because the inequality that he's referring to is an innate property of the market-driven economy. There is no way of addressing this meaningfully, because to do so, you would have to challenge the reason the economy exists in this form, which is to maximize shareholder profits. You can pick away at it, but you can't really fix it. But so as long as we continue to delude ourselves into thinking that just like, oh, one more tweak and neoliberalism could have worked, just one more, oh, always in hindsight, you know? In hindsight, if we had done things a little bit differently, neoliberalism could have worked and it all would have been fine. It's not workable. Like, you have to address the underlying problem here. And I'm not expecting anything socialist from a Clintonite economic advisor, but I'm a socialist, so I guess I'll say it, you know. Yeah, real neoliberalism hasn't been tried yet, essentially. I'm not saying that this guy is being dishonest or anything. I don't think he is. Maybe he's an upstanding guy. I don't really know. He has a nice beard. I just mean that there's something more fundamental you have to get at here.
Now is that these issues had been left unaddressed for so long, it's metastasized into this problem that is now being treated with a very blunt solution.
What about his suit? Nobody wears good suits these days. Genuinely, like, nobody does. So there's not even really a point in talking about it, to be honest.